Yes. Oh, is the, yes, is the recording on?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Okay, so Lee,
Present.
Catherine,
present.
Margaret,
Present.
Scott, absent, Christina, absent, Diane, absent, Bonnie,
Here,
and then Jerry and Igor.
okay. If somebody, Jerry hasn't been, appointed or sworn in or anything as an alternate yet. But Igor's gone through the process and he went to the town office, Igor to be sworn in, you're all sworn in, all the official. So someone, if they want to make a motion to, make Igor a voting
I'll make that motion.
member. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, so, Igor, vote on anything that comes before us. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, so we definitely have a quorum. At 6 o'clock, we have called the Vertex Cell Tower Special Use Permit Public Hearing. Nancy M. Ingalls and Brennan W. Ingalls, map 208, lot 7. And, whoever's here to present on that, the application before us. It is I can read to you what it is. It is the permit application says applicant proposes to build a new personal wireless service facility consisting of a 176-foot tall lattice style tower, 185 feet to the top at the highest
Pertinence.
appurtenance, the top of it,
Yes.
to support the antennas of multiple telecommunication companies inside a 60 by 60-foot fenced-in compound as shown on the site plans and is further described in the project narrative which accompanies this application. Notices were sent out to all the surrounding towns as required and to the abutters. So if you
Good-
want, introduce yourself and propose.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Francis Parisi, representing the applicant Vertex Towers. With your permission, I would love to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint
Sure.
presentation. We can see it there,
Absolutely.
and I think it might be, I gotta unmute you. I don't
Mhm.
know if
That
you
would
actually
be
want me
great.
to mute because I'm just gonna be on that. So you that way you get double.
Okay.
Um, oops.
You can minimize those other icons with those. Right. Copy. So if you use that small line on the top left of the box, you can minimize those icons. So we can see.
There it is, perfect. All right, as the chair read, we are here tonight seeking a special use permit and certain waivers to construct a personal wireless service facility. It's a lot on Lost River Road. It's an undeveloped lot, so it doesn't have a street number, but it's a lot 208-007-002 in your tax assessor's parcel. The board actually may remember that I was here 4 years ago, doing a similar facility on an adjacent lot. What's happened in the last 4 years? COVID. And what's happened is our whole industry has been slowed down by the whole COVID pandemic, first with the lack of being able to develop and then the lack of being able to get materials. In that time, the permits and the transaction that we had on the abutting property all expired. And so we are here tonight essentially do the same thing, but on the abutting lot. From the town's perspective, it's essentially the same thing, but it's technically a new project because it's a separate lot. By way of introduction, for people who don't remember, Vertex Towers is what we call a wireless infrastructure developer. We don't provide telephone service. We build cell towers. And then we rent space to folks like Verizon and AT&T and other folks that you've heard of before. We've been very active in northern New Hampshire for the past several years. Since I did see you last, we built a tower in Bristol, we built a tower in Bath, we built a tower in Lisbon. We've also got permits for another tower in Bath, another tower in Lisbon, a tower in Haverhill, a tower in Littleton, kind of connect that Route 10 and Route 3 and then going around to 112 here. We've also gotten permits in Thornton. We've gotten permits in, we built one tower in North Conway and have another permit in North Conway. We've also been very active down south and built other towers in equally rural areas. And like I said, what's happened in the last 4 years is COVID, but what's really happened in the last 4 years is the demand for wireless telecommunications has increased exponentially. People are trying to work from home, educate from home, hide in homes, and wireless service is becoming more and more valuable. The statistics are staggering. Over 50% of the state of New Hampshire doesn't have a landline phone anymore. They use wireless as their only form of communications. For up to 80% of 911 calls are made by wireless phones. So the need is clearly there. The other thing that's happened in the last 4 years is, we've gotten a secure commitment from Verizon, so we'll be building this tower as soon as we get the permits. We're hoping to get it done before the end of the year. You guys have something up here called winter and snow that impedes our ability to do construction. So our goal is to get it all built after the summer and before the winter. I submitted, the other thing too, just so you understand, your zoning bylaw allows you to grant waivers from certain certain provisions of the wireless bylaw. And there are 3 waivers that I identified. They're actually, quite frankly, the same waivers that we asked for the last time. One, your bylaw has an unusual provision that says that we have to be set back 2 times the height of the facility from abutting property lines and 500 feet from any residence or dwelling. We are more than 500 feet. And actually, this is the opposite the last time. The last time we were 2 times tower height setback from abutting property lines, but not 500 feet from dwellings. In this case, we are more than 500 feet from dwellings, but not 2 times tower height setback from property lines. So we need a waiver from that. 2, there's a height limitation that says you can only build cell towers for the height of the trees, which just makes no technical sense, because they don't work. So we need a waiver from the height limitations. And then also there's a requirement in your zoning bylaw that we, when it is obsolete, that we restore the place back to natural conditions. We'll be building a small access driveway and clearing some trees, and it's impossible to bring it back to natural conditions. So we'd ask for just some relief on that. We can bring it, we'll take down the facility or remove all the above ground facility, but replanting 100-year-old trees just isn't technically possible. I submitted a very large application package as part of the requirements of your zoning bylaw, providing all the technical information. And we'll kind of gloss over it tonight, but if anyone has any specific questions, we can go through it more in detail. The other thing I have tonight for the file and to talk about, since the application, we put a balloon up to do a visibility demonstration to show what it's going to look like, and more importantly, what it's not going to look like from various vantage points. And we have a lot of photos to show from that tonight. And then in addition, I'll throw in a copy of this PowerPoint presentation into the file. The lack of cell phone service is actually becoming a huge public safety hazard at this point. We work with a lot of regional planning commissions. We do a lot of work around the lakes. We built actually we have a permit tower at Holderness, right up against Swan Lake. And given all the recreation activity, all the traffic that comes here, and this is actually a very heavily traveled road because the hospital in Haverhill, and so a lot of people go up this way. Plus the multiple tourist attractions that you have, and the lack of good reliable cell phone service is really a public safety hazard. And we work with a lot of public safety officials for that reason, to make sure that we improve wireless telecommunications. The facility itself is a large. It's a small parcel. Let me see if I get a picture of it. It's a small parcel that's does not have frontage, but it has an existing right of way going down the Lost River Road. surrounded by a much larger parcel. It's substantially undeveloped with the exception of the campground facility closer to Lost River Road. But we're set back, more than about 1,000 feet, 5 times 175 feet. So amply set back from the campground and the nearest residential abutters. All of the land to the left and to the north is all owned by National Forest, so it will never get developed. So I think we found a pretty good location here for the facility. There's an existing driveway that comes off of Lost River Road that goes up to an existing residence, and then we'll continue along that driveway. So what we're actually constructing is about maybe 100 or 150 feet of driveway onto the subject property, and then building the compound itself.
That's represented by that yellow.
What's that?
That's represented, that driveway is represented by the yellow.
Exactly, yes.
Thank you.
The compound itself is 60 by 60. It's very small relative to the size of the lot. We put in a fence. We built a tower foundation, which we actually haven't designed yet, because after we get the permits here, we go back and do geotechnical analysis to see what's really underground, whether there's ledge or sand or whatever. And we design a foundation very specific to the location and very specific to the weather here. We can we get lots of weather data to show what the wind speeds are, and can design a foundation and a tower very specific to the location. Hold on one second. The facility itself is very passive. There's about 6 weeks of construction activity, and then nothing really happened. Goes up there maybe once a month. The tech will go up there just to make sure that the fence is intact. But all the equipment is remotely monitored. There's no noise, no smoke, no lights. We made sure that the FAA won't require us to light it, because sometimes when towers get tall, FAA requires lighting. It doesn't require any lighting. There's no permanent lighting on. If any tech has to go up there, they bring their own lighting. During the winter, we don't plow, because rarely does someone need to go up there. And if someone does need to go up there, we'll bring a snow vehicle, or in an emergency we'll plow, but it's not plowed regularly because we just don't need regular access to it. So from a activity standpoint, it's very passive. It's very benign. Like I said, 6 weeks of construction activity at most. I submitted a lot of data, as you know, and we talked about this the last time. When we started building these type of networks, we thought that they were going to be mobile networks, and we were focused on the major thoroughfares, Route 93, for example. And there's, a couple towers here in Woodstock already along the 93 corridor. There's one that just got built in Lincoln, that's just off this map that serves 93 going up to the Notch. There's a tower at the top of Moon Mountain that got built a couple years ago just off this map. So the 93 corridor and what I would call downtown Woodstock and downtown Lincoln has great coverage. But as you get farther on going towards Benton and Haverhill, but there's really nothing out there. And this is really designed to cover a very small area. We showed a lot of data in the original package showing where the existing coverage is. And there's pretty good coverage along the 93 corridor. But as you come west, pretty much starting where we are now, and then going farther west up the hill, coverage really diminishes. And you have the Ice Castle not too far from here, and then the Lost River up the top. And what this is designed to do is cover that gap. Unfortunately, given the topography, we can't get all the way. There's an existing tower in Easton, I believe, that provides some coverage coming just to the Woodstock border. But as you can imagine, at the very top of the hill there, right where that 90-degree turn is in the road, where the Beaver Pond cutoff is, that's really the top of the hill. We can't get over that without being at the top of it. So really what we're doing is covering just that area. My pointer's not working, from Town Hall to the top of that hill. And we provide a lot of data to show what this is going to do. And it does a pretty good job of covering, all the way to Beaver Pond and that 118 and 112 corridor. And then, the surrounding area around it, the campground, the residential, the recreational facilities, the Ice Castle, and then down at the up at the Lost River, River as well.
A minute, we got a chat from, one of the abutters that's saying, that says that they can't hear the
Can't hear me?
audio.
Oh,
So is there anything on our end that is causing that difficulty? Because it would be nice if we
Unmuted.
could hear also.
There's nothing's muted.
And is there anybody else in the audience that is having hearing difficulty?
Can you hear me now?
See that one chat, it popped on the screen that
Well, you know what? I
was having difficulty
You,
hearing. Could be on his end, but. And who are the other four, on the
there's a
screen?
gentleman named Tom Lemon, who I
Yeah,
think is
that's the one.
he's in a butter. He's in a
Yeah,
butter,
he's,
exactly.
in a butter. Who are the other, three? I'm wondering if they're.
I'm one of them.
Same troubles. Yeah, you're one of them, yeah.
I'm just typing to see if he can hear me. Mr. Lemon, can you hear me now? Well, he's probably muted, so he probably can't respond.
Somebody send him a message and say.
He's got to unmute himself.
Oh, okay, it's on them.
This is as, let me try to ask to unmute.
And you don't want to unmute me because if I'm here,
Yeah.
here, it creates interference.
Yeah, no, it's
It's
he's
just,
not
but
connected to audio is the problem.
I just sent them a text.
I sent a message to him on the chat, and he didn't respond. Sounds like someone in the audience sent him a,
Yeah, I just thought if we can get him.
oh, I completely
access,
agree. That's the
yeah,
whole purpose of this.
Good.
I bet you the problem's on his end, not ours.
Yeah. So the issue isn't on our end at
Right.
all. All right. And this is recorded, so we can listen to it after, later on. All right, I'm sorry, for
No,
interrupting, but I just
No, I
thought.
believe,
Do you want us to call so we can hear on speaker? Would that help?
you drive.
Yeah, you want to, sure.
I know we had some concerns and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's the only one.
He is in a butter, he's right there, and they don't.
Absolutely.
Not everybody's important, everybody that listens in, everybody that. All the participants, but he is right there.
It's more important.
What's that?
What is more important?
It's a thing to do, we try to get him access to be able to hear, that's what we have Zoom for, we try to make it available to everybody. We tried, alrighty.
All right, the facility itself, it's called a lattice style tower. It's pretty much identical to the tower that's already in Woodstock. You see it pretty handily as you come down the hill from the brewery. And it's just past the 112 intersection. You also see it from the highway. It's we designed them with the height and the structural integrity from multiple telecommunications companies. Like I said, we've already got a commitment from Verizon. We're still talking to AT&T and T-Mobile, and just getting them all in the same place at the same time, including Woodstock, Vermont, as opposed to New York. It's always a challenge. Woodstock, New Hampshire, I'm sorry. It's always a challenge, but Verizon's committed to coming on this And then we also build it with the height, we routinely get requests from public safety to put antennas on the tower and we design it with the height and integrity for them as well. And we generally provide that free of charge because it's kind of a win-win for us. So we'll certainly accommodate public safety requests as well. These towers are very low powered. They're not designed to cover all of northern New Hampshire. They're not designed to cover many miles. It's a very low powered facility. And the reason for that is it's a two-way communication. Your cell phone is trying to communicate with the tower and the tower is trying to communicate with the cell phone. And you talk like this all the time. And this is a very low powered transmission. So that has to be an equally low powered transmission. So like I showed on the previous map, this is really designed to cover a couple miles up and down the Route 112 corridor, and certainly not much farther than that. So the facilities themselves are very heavily federally regulated by the FCC with respect to power output. And we provided reports that say when we get this fully loaded with multiple telecommunications companies, all broadcast at the same time, it's still well under 1% of the actual FCC limits because of the fact that we're one, so set back, two, so high, and three, just so distance from many of the residential or recreational butters. Everyone wants to know what's going to look like on April 25th. We put up a balloon, we put an ad in the paper. I worked with Kathy quite a bit to make sure we advertised it. I know I was able to talk to some of the abutters that were able to visualize it. And I think, and I have a bunch of photographs as well that I want to kind of show folks because I think it's very helpful. Everyone always thinks when we do 175 foot tall structures that you're going to see it. And given the setback, given the dense forest, given everything, I think we saw that day that, and it was the same as the last time, that the visibility of this is very limited. And I don't do these. We engage consultants that drive around and that put a balloon up in there. They certify the height of the balloon. They can measure the string. So the tower itself is 175. But the string itself was 175, which means that the balloon was actually a little bit higher than the tower. But it's pretty representational. And then they can do with Photoshop very good photo simulations as to what it's going to look like. What they did is they drove around all the 112 and the 118 corridor and took pictures going out a couple miles in each direction. There aren't that many roads in the area, and what these red represent where they took photographs from, where there was no visibility, and what the yellow represents where there was partial visibility through trees or obstructed views. If there were like full-on views, we would have done a green circle, but there really were no full-on views of the facility, which was quite nice. And I can scroll through all these, but really photographs 1, 2, and 3 are the most relevant ones because that's where there's some partial visibility. And you can see photograph 1 is actually taken from Mr. Lemon's driveway. Photograph 2 is taken from the campground, and photograph 3 is taken from the campground, and photograph 2 is taken from Lost River, just past the camp store, kind of going up the hill where there was a little bit of visibility. But I drove around quite a bit that day. I know other folks were doing it as well, and I think you'll agree that it was minimally visible from the few vantage points that you could see it. I don't know how well you know this area here. You go up the campground driveway, and then Mr. Lemon's driveway continues up the hill, and then we will be continuing past his property up there's an existing driveway / cart path that we'll be using to get to the subject property. You can see the balloon there. Unfortunately, my point is not working on your screen. You can see the balloon there in the middle, and then this is what it will look like when it's fully built out. And we were fortunate enough to do this in April when there were no leaves on the trees. I think when the leaves come in, it'll fill in quite handily there. And I'm not saying it's invisible, but it'll be minimally visible. He's seeing what that tells me is he's seeing the top maybe 20 or 30 feet of the tower, and certainly not the whole structure. And similarly from just one vantage point on Route 2, and it was kind of like as you come past the camp store, there's a sign. that, I think when you're coming down the hill, it says Lost River Campground. When you're going up the hill, it says something else. And that's kind of the landmark of where you can kind of sort of see it through the trees. You can kind of see it there, just next to the birch tree in the center. And then when we build it out, that's what it'll look like. And see here in this vantage point, when the leaves get on the trees, certainly those trees in the foreground and even in the background, you know, it'll diminish the visibility substantially. And then the only other place that there was some visibility was at the campground. It actually doesn't even get above, see how there's kind of like two layers of trees? There's kind of the brush layer and then the extended layer, and it's kind of there right at the top of the brush layer. And when we put it in there, it's in there and you can't really see it. So, and my suspicion is that it'll be completely invisible from the campground, because it certainly wasn't above the top layer of trees or certainly the brush level. So my suspicion is if we put the brush, the balloon up today, you wouldn't see it at all from the campground. And then I can go through all the other photographs if you want, but there's just a lot of photographs taken from various vantage points, not visible, not visible, not visible. There's just all the different places along Lost River, along Route 118. There's just, these guys that do this actually get paid by the simulations, so they want to do more simulations, and there really just wasn't anywhere to do simulations because it really just was minimal visibility. Down by self-storage facility, looking at the driveway, no visibility. Sawyer Highway, no visibility. Farther down Lost River, close to Little Town, farther up Lost River. So there's just a lot of photographs that show no visibility. I'm sure you read it. I submitted a 25-page memorandum in the original package with going through your whole zoning bylaw and explaining the project and how we meet all the requirements for a personal wireless service facility, both for the special use permit that's required and for the few waivers that we need as well. I think we've done a pretty good job of citing this to minimize the visibility. We're giving maximum benefit. Certainly the need is there to improve telecommunications in Woodstock. We picked a lot that abuts the national forest. It really has no impact on the national forest because you can't get anywhere near there. There's no trails or anything. The national forest actually gets notified. We actually get calls from the national forest because there's so much recreational activity. We worked with the national forest on a site in Thornton with a very prominent hiking trail that had no coverage. And during COVID, the people went out in the woods and got lost. And so the National Service is actually National Park Service. The National Forest is supportive of our efforts because it improves their ability to provide public safety. Like I said, there's no lighting, there's no noise, there's no anything. It's just a very quick construction turnaround time. So we certainly meet the purpose and intent of all your zoning bylaw. We don't need to go to the zoning board for the height waiver or the setback waiver because the bylaw gives this planning board the ability to waive as opposed to vary. But quite frankly, the waiver requirements are the same as if we needed to go to a zoning board for a waiver. It's just you get to make the decision as opposed to the zoning board. And but there's 5 conditions: that there's no effect on property values, that there's not contrary to the public interest, that it's and then unnecessary hardship if you were to deny the waiver, and granting the waiver constitutes substantial justice. And I submitted a very extensive memorandum going through each of those criteria. There really is no effect on property values. In fact, the opposite is starting to occur. The lack of telecommunications coverage is having an effect on property values, and people are having issues dealing with property and developing property. And we work quite a bit in suburban communities and down south in the more populated New Hampshire to bring better telecommunications because people are finding that out. And there's been lots of court cases and studies to show that. Everything else, it's certainly in the public interest. There's public safety benefits. There's everyone wants to use their phone for communication and business and education. there's already similarly sized towers in Woodstock and Lincoln and Bristol and Plymouth and all the towns up and down here. We're very active in trying to bring better telecommunications to the North Country because the need is there. And it's hard because up until a few years ago, the economics didn't make sense. These are relatively expensive facilities to build. And then in addition, the telecommunications companies to bring in electronics is very expensive. And let's be honest, there's not as many people in Woodstock as there is in Manchester or Boston or New York. And companies like Verizon and AT&T are trying to cover the whole country. And so to focus on rural areas like Woodstock, New Hampshire has been a challenge, but we've gotten them to do that. And in addition, there's some public safety mandates that the federal government has imposed on telecommunications companies to bring better telecommunications to rural areas like Woodstock. So we actually do a lot of work farther north in the Notch, where there's even less people and less traffic than around here. In the last couple of years, we built 2 towers. The last 5 years, we built 2 towers in Jefferson, one in Lancaster. Like I said, we built one in Bath. We've got permits in Lisbon. We built one in Lisbon, and so even much more rural areas. And we've been going farther north in the next wave, north of Littleton and to the east of Littleton, just to Carroll and Dalton and things, even smaller towns, because there are people there, there's traffic there, and we finally came up with an ability to actually do it in such a way that it makes economic sense. So I went through all the requirements for a waiver. The board saw fit to grant the waivers last time. They're essentially the same ones, and so I would hope that we get that today. And so with that, I'm going to take a very large, and the last thing I want to say, and I think the board knows this, the federal government heavily regulates these type of facilities. In addition, the federal government heavily promotes these type of facilities. Back about 20 years ago, actually 25 years ago, the government adopted a very extensive telecommunications bylaw. They broke up AT&T into multiple companies. They licensed multiple wireless telecommunications companies. They're trying to foster competition in telecommunications and better and improved telecommunications. And there's very extensive statutes on the books that basically say you don't have to say yes, but you can't say no without sufficient reason. And there's been lots of towns that have tried to regulate it. There are lots of court cases out there. And if I were putting this next to the elementary school or some sensitive area, you might have grounds, but in the middle of the woods with minimal visibility, I think we found a good spot. And it's the government is trying to encourage this type of development for public safety purposes, for competition purposes. There's multiple telecommunications companies out there now operating in New Hampshire and throughout the country, and the government is just trying to really encourage that, both at the federal level and at the state level as well. And so with that, I'm going to take a very deep breath and say we respectfully request that the planning board grant the special use permit, grant the waivers we've requested, and to the extent we have any questions, I have all the maps and site plans and everything up here if the board wants to talk about them in more detail, if the public has any questions, but we respectfully request. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you is, like I said, these facilities are very heavily federally regulated as well. Different than any other development in New Hampshire or in anywhere in the country. We have very extensive oversight from an environmental perspective. There's a very large umbrella law called the National Environmental Policy Act, and it requires us to do extensive due diligence to make sure that we don't have any impact on any environmental issues. And that's a huge broad word. We have to make sure we don't have any impact on migratory birds or endangered species, both plant and wildlife, or to make sure we don't have any impact on Native American resources, in addition to stormwater runoff and all that kind of stuff. So we are very so once we finish here, we do about a 4-month due diligence package. We have to notify about 30 Indian tribes that say at one point they were in Woodstock, New Hampshire. We need to make sure that they don't have any resources that we'd be impacting. And our engineers are actually really good about recognizing those things we can do some database research, but our goal is to finish up here as quickly as possible so that we can finish that process, and then start the construction before the snow comes. So, we have to answer whatever questions the board has or the public has with respect to the facility, and, at this point, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I'll leave this up, so if people have questions, we can jump back.
That would be good, in case we want to refer to something. All right, we'll start by, board members. Do you have any questions you want to ask?
Yes.
Okay.
The last time that you were here in 2019 was for a company called Vortex Tower Assets LLC.
Yes.
And it was on, so that's a different company. It's according to the Secretary of Commonwealth,
Yeah.
right? Yes. And it was on a different parcel, right?
Correct.
Okay, so anything that has to do with those waivers really has nothing to do with these waivers. Because it was a different company
Right.
on a different parcel,
It's a new
but it's a
application
completely
Yeah.
different company.
that needs.
Vertex Towers and there's Vertex Tower Assets. Okay, so that's,
Your statement, they're related companies,
of course, but
but this is a
they're
completely
twins,
new application.
right? Two different
Completely new.
brothers. That's right. I understand. So I just want to make sure that all those waivers are not in consideration that were done before because of the different company.
It has to stand, this application has to stand on its own.
Yes.
Okay,
So the permits that we got previously have expired.
okay, that was my next question.
Yes.
Because the question that I had was because we granted the waivers, do our waivers expire ever? Because could they say we're gonna build 2 towers side by each?
Each application stands on its own merit. The other application is
Gone.
expired. It's
Okay.
gone.
All right,
It's gone. And it doesn't mean you make the same choice today as you made then.
Mhm.
Although, past vote to the board or, on record.
If I can answer that question,
Indicator,
we received a special use permit.
Yep.
We are required to exercise those, meaning commence construction within 2 years unless we come back and ask for an extension of that, which we did not.
Gotcha.
So those
Right.
expired,
got it.
and we're not, so that does not allow us to build 2 towers side by each. We're here tonight. We no longer have a business arrangement with that prior landowner as well. We set up a new business arrangement. We don't have the right to be there.
Yeah,
We're here on this part.
Perfect. All right. Is there there's a right of way, then I take it through the parcel, the large parcel?
Yes, it's a deeded right of way that goes from Lost River across the campground parcel all the way to the,
Or is it a described right of way or is it just a right of way? You know, you can get from here to there.
it's described.
Okay, good. Do you have a copy of that deed?
I don't, but I mentioned.
I do.
You do? Great.
And those, right of ways, the property involving those right of ways, and the owner of those right of ways were noticed as if they were
Oh, absolutely.
abutters.
Yep.
Okay. Actually,
They are,
I'm not gonna read this.
Consider
I'll read it later.
Yeah, okay.
But no, actually, you keep it and I will track you down. How's
oh,
that?
great.
Okay.
That we asked legal advice, and the owners of those right of ways are abutters, are treated as,
Oh, well, one, they're direct property, but it's, I consider the applicant, I was speaking to the tax assessor and.
right,
Because we're. Crossing over the large parcel,
right,
we notified abutters to the large parcel as well,
right.
which included Mr. Lemon. Who's a
Mr.
relevant,
Lemon
but
would be an abutter,
but also the folks down the street and across the street that technically aren't abutters to the subject parcel, but they're abutters to the large parcel, so I
right.
think we. Right,
Abutters all
So-
around the whole
yes,
perimeter.
exactly. All right.
And the campground, is considered an abutter,
Yes,
but the RVs or whatever that, are not
correct.
abutters. If they register their RV as a motor vehicle,
That's correct. We run into this situation routinely, and what the chair says is correct. If it's real property, they are abutters,
right,
and if it's personal property, they're not.
right. We researched that to be sure of the status of that. Okay.
I have many more questions, but you know.
Okay, all right, we will continue. Did you have did there was someone in the
So I
audience?
just want to clarify that about the.
Yes.
because I have 28 sites up there.
Right,
Half of them are cabins,
We own the campground.
yes, okay,
half of them are cabins, and the other half, some of them are seasonal and some of them
Right.
are rental sites, not RV sites. Some of those, seasonals are, some of them are taxpayers, and some
Right.
of them are registered trailers.
right,
Just want to make sure.
yes,
Okay.
yes. The ones that are taxpayers that choose to go that route.
Yeah.
And pay property tax, dollars. Are one category, and those that choose, to consider that RV, that structure as a motor vehicle registration is a different situation. And we sent you, when we sent the
Yes.
notice
I did.
to the campground, we advised that we advise you as, the owner of the campground to notify.
Yeah.
Let them know, at least let them know.
Yeah.
That it was up to you to decide, whether, who to notify the campground.
Mhm.
All right,
So in your request for waivers, the setback for the height, and the distance, the setback requirements, it says, this facility as designed will meet the minimum setback requirements of the Woodstock Building Ordinance. And the tower will be set back more than twice the height and more than 200 feet from all lot lines, public rights of way, dwellings, and residential buildings. My question is then, is there a residential building within 5 times the,
No, I'm gonna tell you, that's a typo. We are not,
so this is not accurate then?
we are not 2 times tower height setback from the property line. We are more than 1 times, but not 2 times.
And
So I need a waiver from that.
are there any residential buildings within 5 times?
No.
Okay,
So, and that's the difference from the last one. We were closer than
so
5
this
times.
is not correct.
And I apologize for that, that's.
Okay, so then my next question is, if we were to grant this, would there be a prohibition on building in the area 5 times the ordinance, as the ordinance says, for other people on the abutting lands?
that's
I would say no.
I know you would.
That's a
But Did you think about it?
No, because I'll use an example, SpaceX, we all saw SpaceX, the rocket blew up. The FAA granted authority for the rocket to go up. Nobody ever dreamed that abutting property miles away would be damaged, and now the FAA is being sued by these property owners. We're in the position of the FAA. I don't want the town to be sued by other people should this tower fall down on somebody after we after we approve a waiver.
3 different statements. If people were to build on their own property closer than the setback required by the tower, that's like they're doing it consciously and after the fact. They're not prohibited. I'm prohibited from building within 5 times, but they're not prohibited from saying, I don't care. And then with respect to, you use the word fall. These towers are very over-engineered. And what happens is they upgrade the engineering standards. We over-design them. And what's common in my world is that towns impose a 1 times tower height setback. Because it's inconceivable from an engineering perspective that it would.
I'm not, I can't debate that with you because I'm not an engineer. All I am is a custodian of the town's ordinance. That's all I can do is talk to you from that perspective.
We're not, I don't have the right to prohibit. I don't think this town has the right to prohibit. If anyone wants to build after that tower's up on their property, they're free to do it. I'm the one, I can't do it without permission from the town,
Mhm.
but that doesn't that means I can't build something, less than 5 times tower height setback.
I think he's probably right.
But the problem becomes is if a residential dwelling is built and some unforeseen accident happens, we don't know what that is because it's unforeseen, which begins at the tower that affects the residential building, then we are at risk because we have waived the ordinance.
Hopefully it would be noticed. I mean, hopefully, it, you know, I don't know, I do know, in the planning board, you cannot, you make a decision at this point in time, based on the rules you have on the books at this point in time. You can't prohibit anybody from coming in to ask for a further subdivision later on. You can't say, this is it, never, never, never. You
That's
never
your
can
point.
have any
You're
more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's his point exactly.
You know,
They
you
can go in there
should do
and build there within that circumference space around that. And then if there is an issue, because we, as the board, approved that waiver,
Right.
will be responsible as a town for damage to
So
person or property within that specific
I
space that
don't
we
know.
made.
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe we should, maybe.
That's a good question. I don't know. You know, we have due diligence at this point in time.
Right, so we need to ask that question then
Uh,
to legal counsel.
But whether we can tie the hands in the future, and you know, I would think it's on record. And it should be. I don't know, I think we need an answer, but I do know, you can say, okay, this is enough now. You can't say you can never have 50 more, ever. A person can come back and ask.
Right.
They can come back and ask.
I'm just
You
concerned
may-
about the
they may
liability to
grant
the
it.
town.
Yeah, no, that's a good
The
question.
gentleman wants to speak.
Okay, yes,
Yeah, I just want to say that we do have intentions on doing more building up there. That's why we bought 188%, you know.
There's actually an open permit up there now.
Yeah, correct.
Existing.
How far that is, I don't know, but we also intend on building a house up there, so it's just to say that, you know, we're doing that. Because we want to be right there, no, it's a GM plan that we're intending on using, where
Right.
exactly, I don't know, but.
Right.
There's more expansions than.
so does the 500 feet block over onto your property
With all due respect, it's 5 times the
times?
the height. It's not 500 feet.
Yeah.
It's closer to 1,000 feet.
Yeah, 185.
There's no builder beware, is there?
I mean,
Builder beware clause?
I think there may be, but you know, I can't say for 100% sure how anybody would look at it in the future. Yeah, it's 1,000 feet, it's not, it's,
But do we have a map where it shows their lot and
There is, it's in the,
It's in the packet.
yeah, there's, actually, it's in the back here.
It's on the-
we have it here, so we can put it on the screen, so.
You can see right there, the,
The dot.
there's unfortunately my point is not working. The square that's the standalone lot in the middle, in the side of the triangle is the lot that we're going on. And those yellow lines show that we are 190 feet from the nearest property line. So we are more than 1 times tower height setback,
Right.
but not 2 times tower height setback.
What is the campground lot, so where they can build? In which areas the campground can build?
Everything else is.
They can build anywhere they want on their property.
So that triangle, that's the campground lot,
Yes,
Yes.
that large triangle?
yes.
And there's Tom Lemon's house, which is off of the access road, and then the other,
So you much can build under the tower.
What's that?
You can pretty much build under the
yeah.
proposed tower.
We have an active permit open for an extension off of where you see that seasonal road, where we put, over $500,000 in glamping cabins just in the last 2 years. There's another extension of the permit coming right up towards that too. And that's my concern. I mean, we're not opposed to the tower going up, we're opposed to where it was. We spoke with him earlier this year and he was further down the access road. And we, was discussing money, and I looked at my wife and said, people come here for the scenery, they come to get away, that's why people are coming here. And where it was gonna be was just gonna be an eyesore, and it wasn't worth it to me. Okay, to have to look at this now, we'd love to have someone come, so we're not customers, but at what risk? And the problem is, there's other land, if he said that it could have been moved, I would have put him up near the top of the triangle. He's at about 1,250 feet elevation, and he would have been over 1,400 feet further up, and it would have been an eyesore. Problem is, where he's going, Tom's gonna see it, we're gonna see it, and whatever we put up in that way. Because right between Tom's house and the other lot is some of the flattest area of our property there is, because there's a mountain. You know what I mean? We're not opposed to the town, we're just opposed to where he wants to put it. Just same way we were when the money was going in our pocket, tough to deal, at what cost,
Well- One of the things he has to show, what you have to show is, effect on property values is one thing. And that there is no other alternative, that his idea, putting it way up there, out of the way more, isn't a feasible
It's
option.
also both
So
better
those-
elevation.
Those are two things, that need to be discussed. Is this location going to diminish property values? Potential for him to develop this land further. And number two, is there an alternative to address that?
The board may recall, we got a permit and we struck a business deal with the previous owner.
Right.
To build it much closer to the campground and much closer to Mr. Lemon's residence. And we were not more than 5 times the height of the tower. And that deal expired. To be honest, we had substantial discussions with the owners of the campground. And we could not come to an agreement because we couldn't find a place that was feasible to build. We couldn't come to money terms because their land is valuable. They have the plans to do expansion. So the only other alternative that we could come up with was to go on the adjacent parcel. These aren't huge money makers. Finding available land, we look for land that really doesn't have much other value. The campground had value, they camped there. If someone could build a residential subdivision or a commercial building or something, it's probably more feasible to do that. So finding land that's even available to us. And then it's gotta be constructible, there's gotta be access to it. We have to bring in utility service, that's a significant expense. So, we explored, we submitted an affidavit as part of the original package, I can show you that, of all the different other landowners
Right.
or land that we have. The other problem that we have here is that the majority of land in this area is owned by the National Forest.
Right.
And there's no access to it. To my knowledge, the National Forest has not let anybody build cell towers on their land or build access driveways on their land. And so we're challenged in that regard. So we believe that this is really the only viable alternative. We believe that the impact on the town and the abutters are minimal, and the benefits are substantial. So
we were
It's those issues of public good, one of those issues of need for communications versus individual property rights. That's how you weigh the waiver.
Right.
Approval or not.
Yeah, so
Go on with your list.
the tower, in some spots it says it's 175 feet, some it's 176, just for clarification, it is.
the tower, the steel itself is 175.
All right, that's all I need to
Well,
know.
hold on, let me.
Yeah, and then you go 10 feet above it.
And then the foundation picks up 1 foot, so we got
Okay.
caught one, so now we say it's 176. And then there's a small lightning rod at the top, and then we anticipate that the town is gonna say, can we put an antenna on the top? And they tend to have very small antennas, that looks like that flagpole right there, and we anticipate that
Right.
to be the top.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why we do that is because when you get over 200 feet, you start potentially triggering FAA issues. The lights, we don't want lights, the abutters don't want lights, the town don't want lights. And so we try very hard to, we make sure that we are any FAA restrictions.
You mentioned that, so that according to this map, the boundary lines of that land is 172 feet, from here, so the distance is less than one height, right?
No, there's two different numbers on that. One shows the compound, the fence.
Oh, okay,
There's no
so-
setback for the fence other than normal zone.
Gotcha, so
The
it's,
tower,
so it's just right to it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thanks, that's, and the 175, 176, I just needed clarification. You mentioned National Forest. I'm gonna skip in a different section from my questions here. I actually talked to the White Mountain National Forest folks. Woman with the last name of Lieberman down in Campton. They understand the federal government's desire to have cellular facilities. And there's currently AT&T proposed a tower to them on the Kank on Route 112 headed in the other direction, along with other towers. And they said that it does not meet their criteria. However, there's other technology, small cell technology, that would fit with their ordinances more. It sounds like it would fit with our ordinances more, and it's actually on the Vertex Tower website about these. Can you talk to us about the small cell technology that doesn't require towers?
Small cell really is there are places in the world that are not only challenged by coverage, by geography, distance from the cell tower, but there's also places where you're struggling with capacity for the networks. Like in a place like Boston or Manchester, for example, there's a big tall building in downtown Manchester, but there are antennas. So all of downtown Manchester gets great coverage. But when there's a baseball game or a concert or Cinco de Mayo last week, the networks get constrained with capacity. So telecommunications companies are building what they call small cells to cover not a large geography, but a heavily populated area. You see them in near schools and near malls and near heavily populated areas. And it's designed to cover 100 feet, maybe 100 yards in each section. So when you talk about Pengabengus, which is a 20-mile road from Lincoln to Conway, you never, it's a great concept, but it'll never happen because of technology. So same thing with this side. It's too big a geography that we're trying to cover.
Mhm.
And in addition, you have to have telephone poles. And I don't know where the telephone poles end along Lost River, but they certainly don't go up.
Right.
So in a place like Boston or Manchester, there's telephone pole infrastructure, and you can see they look like canisters on the top of the telephone poles. But that's like I said in Manchester and Concord and
So
densely populated areas.
So, just to go back, the conversation that AT&T is having with the National Forest Service is to install a network to get across the Kank. And thinking about your project and going from here to wherever, to the 3 miles that there's a void. At the top of the hill, we have the Lost River up there. And there's also National Forest. Have you approached the National Forest to ask them or to request a tower be put up there? Because it seems to me there would be a lower tower and it might fit within our ordinance. And it might even serve your purposes into Easton.
I've never spoken to National Forest, but other folks, real estate professionals have spoken. They just don't build towers on National Forest land. So we have to, and it's the federal government, there's not a landowner, we have to strike a business deal with somebody. And
Is the one on Loon Mountain on National Forest? I don't know. I haven't looked it up.
Loon Mountain is privately owned.
No, that's a private, yeah.
Loon Mountain is privately owned,
Right.
and they put a tower up there.
Yeah.
And that's a private landowner. So, and it's a challenge too, because you have to have utility service, you have to have access, you have to have, it's gotta be constructible. A lot of the land that the National Forest owns is inaccessible just based on access, there's no roads, it's too steep, so we believe that this is really the only alternative. you know, the other thing you gotta look at too is visibility. We're not at the top of the hill. So when you drive along Route 112, you know, there's a mountain behind the tower.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to the top of the hill up by Beaver,
Mhm.
it's gonna be much more visible.
What would be your plan to fill that gap going from Beaver Pond down into Easton?
We don't have one.
Okay. All right, because I know all of this is about filling the gap, and this tower is like a 3 mile gap.
Right, and we try very hard to do the best we can with the geography. You know, we have there's not a one tower fits all.
I know.
And it's based on topography. We showed topography maps to show that you know, if you think about it, the highway itself is in a valley. There's roads, you know, especially if you go higher up the hill, it's in a valley. So there's really only a few limited places that shoot up that valley
Mhm.
because the road curves down around the campground. So it's just a challenge to find places that work from a technical perspective that don't have a significant visual impact and are constructible. The engineers are the ones up front saying, can they build this? Can we build this? Not, and you know, we're pretty good about building stuff in steep terrain, but it's a challenge.
So I understand your reason for wanting to be at 175 or 180 feet. And you've provided us the map that shows the coverage at that level. The burden of proof on the applicant is to provide us with proof that that's the only viable alternative. Do you have a map that shows within ordinance, if you did it, the height within ordinance? And I know what you're gonna say, but do you have a map? We need proof, not just verbs, you know?
I submitted a map of all the places that we contacted in the area and all the different lots. Yeah, and so we're in a limited geography as well. We can't go to North Woodstock. We can't go farther up the highway. So we did submit a map, and I can call it like to show all.
Yeah, what's the delta between the coverage at the proposed height versus the coverage at the
Ordinance height, that's my
What,
question.
yeah,
Thank
what's the delta?
I
And do you have that
I did
map?
not produce that, and the reason is that, and I certainly can.
Okay,
You didn't have a hard number. The tower can only be 150 feet tall.
Mhm.
Your zoning bylaw, and it's very common, it's 20 feet above trees or something like that.
Right.
We don't even look at those. We say, do I need a variance or do I need a waiver? Because that's such a arbitrary thing. And the reason why it's arbitrary is because the world isn't flat and trees aren't uniform. So to say 20 feet above the tree canopy, when you're on a hill, might be below the tree canopy 50 feet away. And there's hills and valleys. So we have to be above the terrain and above the tree canopy in order for these to work. In addition, other provisions of the zoning bylaw require us, back in the old days, AT&T and Verizon used to build cell towers, and they didn't play in the same sandbox very well. So they would build towers, and AT&T would build a tower, and then Verizon would say, "Can we get on that tower?" And AT&T would say, "Well, yeah, maybe in a few years or whatever." And so they started proposing towers right next door, side by each. And people like Vertex came into the market and said, "We will build a tower that's tall enough for multiple people, that has a structural integrity for multiple people, that's in a location that multiple people need, so that we don't get multiple applications." So then you like, these are basically vertical strip malls. We build with a site an area for Verizon, an area for AT&T, an area for Dish, an area for T-Mobile, an area for Cellular One. And we need to make sure that that lowest guy on the totem pole also has the ability to get a quality signal, because then we're not satisfying your bylaw, which requires us to build it to satisfy multiple carriers. So it's rare that I don't need height relief. There's some towns that say, yeah, you can build 180 feet. That's rare. Some towns put a hard limit, 150 feet, 120 feet, and we try. Anytime that the town says we gotta be 20 feet above trees, we ask for relief. And in this case, a waiver, because it's just technically impossible.
Because we have no zoning in Woodstock, for me, the ordinance, I look at the ordinance as something that could set precedent if we're not thorough. And so my only goal here is to be thorough. So if you could provide us with that data,
Yeah.
because again, burden of proof being what it is, that would really be helpful to me. All right, let's see. So I'm gonna ask all of these. Cleanup waiver. I understand that about the 100-year trees. This is probably more between you and the people who own the land under the right of way. But it's gonna be poles overground poles, not underground utilities?
Probably, yes.
If it's underground utilities, would you be removing all of the bolts? If it's
No,
poles, I get it, because you remove the poles,
uh,
that's above ground.
We have an arrangement with the landowner of the tower to remove the tower down to grade.
Mhm.
And because we don't dig up foundations. And I think from the town's perspective as well, if this tower were to become obsolete, we don't want 175 feet of steel in the air. Whether there's a foundation 700 feet off Lost River Road, that's really not the town's concern. However, they said bring it back to natural conditions. So we'll be cutting down some trees to facilitate construction. And, you know, but again, because it's hundreds of feet off of Lost River Road, replanting doesn't really matter. But what I was gonna tell you, I don't know whether your bylaw requires it, but a lot of towns require us to post a bond.
I didn't see that in there, but it's funny you should say it, because I mean, in having to look at telecommunication ordinance in the future, it's
And
definitely something that
if
should be
the town were
reviewed.
to require a bond, we would say yes. It's kind of a weird concept because we produce them all the time, they cost money, and they've never been exercised because it hasn't become obsolete yet, but you know, telephone poles are becoming obsolete, but you get bonds for all the telephone poles in town, but we are required in many towns, so it's part of the process. If the town will require it, and it basically says if the tower becomes obsolete, that there will be a bond in place to remove it.
Is there a utility easement already from the furthest, the closest point of utilities to
The
the?
access driveway also has utility right.
Okay. And you can get us a copy of that?
What's the life expectancy of the tower?
We generally anticipate 15 years. We sign very long-term deals with the landowners. I don't know. And only because wireless telecommunications has expanded dramatically in the last 20 years. I started doing this in 1996, and I thought it was a project. And once we got coverage everywhere, you know, we'd be done. And we've seen in the last 20 years, you know, we've gone from a wired world to a wireless world. You know, our phones do more. When I first started this, they were telephones. Now they're internet access devices and streaming video. And that requires a better signal. So places, not so much here, but there are places in more suburban, in urban areas where we had great coverage 5 years ago, but because the frequencies that people are using and the bandwidth that people require, we don't have coverage anymore. We're building sites in much more residential areas that had coverage based on network 20 years ago that no longer do because of demand. So it's hard to say, but it's not going anywhere soon. You know, companies like Verizon and AT&T are investing billions to build and improve and you know provide coverage to areas that don't have coverage, where this is not going away, but because it's, you know, nothing's permanent, we're routinely required to post a bond.
I think that, can we get the bonds requirement
We,
initiated and in place for this project? Because in reading that, I had issues with the also the property owner potentially being responsible for the removal of that after 12 months. And if I was a property owner, I wouldn't want to be paying for the removal of a tower. That's just part of the ordinance that we have, so. I mean, I would want, if that's not getting waived. I
Because
would
there's
want to make
waivers,
sure-
maybe there's an opportunity
Well,
for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, you are being asked to grant a special use permit. With that ability is your opportunity to impose reasonable conditions. And that would be a condition that I would think
Right.
reasonable, and you certainly could impose it.
this ordinance is 8 years old and we've had a conversation that it's time to look at it again. Perhaps add the bond feature. Obviously, that would be something we do in a rewrite.
Right.
I think if the applicant was willing.
Yep.
Which it sounds like he is.
But like I said, you can vote to say, I
Could.
approve condition, and we would not oppose that.
We could impose a bond because he's willing, the applicant's willing, but I don't think we could make them. Because our ordinance doesn't require it, but,
Understood.
As a point of clarity, our ordinance does actually specify a height limit.
Yes, it
100
does.
feet.
100 feet,
the 100 feet is in there. I found it
I
myself.
apologize,
Yeah.
I would have asked for a waiver, I thought I asked for,
It was in your height limitation waiver, note
Right.
was 100 feet.
Right,
I
but-
just mentioned it in case it allowed you to answer her earlier question.
Right, you know, these facilities are anywhere from 150 to 180 feet tall, depending on the location and the height and the topography. So, you know, like I said, 9 times out of 10, I have to get some sort of height relief because, and what's happened too, when everyone started adopting their bylaws, they didn't know what we were getting. And now you can say, we already have a tower in Woodstock. We have towers in Lincoln that we can see. And in addition, the demand has increased, not decreased. So all of the negativity around cell towers is diminishing. And people are more like, when can you come to my town? And sometimes I make the newspaper, you can Google me. And what happens when I make the newspaper, I get calls the next day from people saying, when can you come to my town? And I know it's like a function of economics and bandwidth and, you know, and being everywhere, but we're trying the best we can to go, and do the best we can. And then COVID put a kind of a supply chain, put a kind of a speed bump on them.
Do we have?
Couple more
Okay.
things, yeah, so in our ordinance, it says in the case of a new tower application, in addition to the requirements in the section under 3F. Applicant must submit proof that the Federal Aviation Administration has been contacted regarding height and location of the proposed tower and has no objection. You provided a tower air determination result. And Tower Air says Tower Air's findings are not definitive or binding, and we cannot guarantee that the data in Tower Air are fully current and accurate. In some cases, Tower Air may yield results that differ from application of the criteria set out in 47 CFR section 17.7 and 14 CFR section 77.13. A positive finding by Tower Air recommending notification should be given considerable weight. On the other hand, a finding by Tower Air recommending either for or against notification is not conclusive. It is a responsibility of each ASR participant to exercise due diligence to determine if it must coordinate the structure with the FAA. Tower Air is the only tool designed to assist ASR participants in exercising this due diligence, and further investigation may be necessary to determine if FAA coordination is appropriate. It says the determination of Tower Air. First off, Tower Air is not the FAA, and our ordinance does not allow for somebody else to speak on behalf of the FAA. We just need notification that they have been notified. That's first.
Okay, let me explain the process. I agree with everything you said. We do tow air.
Sorry.
And usually that tells us yes or no. And sometimes we require registration, or sometimes we built a tower in Bristol, and there's an airport in Bristol.
Mhm.
And day one, it said, you're gonna have an impact on air navigation. And we took that into account and designed it appropriately. If we get a negative result, we proceed. But we don't notify the FAA because we really can't notify the FAA until we're ready to build. Because they don't want, a lot of increase, because if you told me to, move this to the side of town, which is not gonna happen, so we, prior to construction, we noticed them. And, but we're quite confident based on our research that no, registration or, more importantly to the town, demarcation is required. Sometimes you gotta paint them red and white, sometimes you gotta put a blinky light on it. We don't want that. You don't want that. The butters don't want that. And so we're quite and I understand that's not definitive, but the reason why it's not definitive is because you might permit an airport before I get done.
So, it's required in our ordinance, and it says structure does not require registration. There are no airports within 8 kilometers, 5 miles of the coordinates you provided. Actually, there is. It's NH 49, it's Bradley Field Airport. And it is a registered FAA airport. And the president landed there, and a congresswoman and 2 senators within the last year. So it's there.
Within 5 kilometers?
Yeah, I'll show you where it is if you want to,
I'm just surprised, because usually, I've not heard of it before.
About 5 miles.
it's now it's like 3.5. I'll show you where it is. Let's see.
I'm just curious.
It's right. This is probably not the best map for it to be on. It's right in here. In this interval. And it's 1,000-foot runway. If you do FAA NH 48, it's there. It'll give you the details. And the owner's Ralph Bradley. It's Bradley Field Airport.
If it's registered, then it would have shown up on TOW Air. I will confirm, I understand your concern.
Yep.
I'm not concerned because I think it's just confirmation that it's in the FAA database. Well, we plug in very specific coordinates and it tells us it, and if there is sometimes we do, like I said, Bristol had an airport, and then they look at the flight path, sometimes if the flight goes this way, and we're over
I
here.
mean, quite frankly, I don't think that there's any, we're also in a military operations area. That's a whole other thing, 2 different stacks of that, Yankee 1 and Yankee 2. But that's the notification.
I know all about that.
What's that?
I know all about that.
Okay, so that's part of why we need to know that you contacted the FAA. So that's very important to us.
So I'm saying that,
To me.
we, just so you know, I had another town ask me to contact Yankee 1 and Yankee 2. And they don't have anybody to answer the phone. They didn't, it was a very convoluted process. But we, and everyone said, and I'll tell you, it was storming 2 or 3 towns over from here. They said those planes are flying over our house at 100 feet. And we found out, no, they're flying at 500 feet. They're way up there, and because the Yankee 1, and I can provide you all the data. The Yankee 1, Yankee 2 military operations zone is like, don't quote me on the number, but it's like 500,000 feet above.
No, it's not that. I don't have that information with me, but suffice it to say, we do have low flying aircraft, but again, it's as long as we have notification that the FAA was notified, something that says that they were notified.
Just to tick the box.
Just to tick the box, we need that because it is very important.
Awesome.
And I think that may be it for my
Do
questions.
other board members have questions? Ask right now. Then we'll open it up to the public to hear comments from anybody in the audience, and then we'll on the Zoom, see if there's anybody there that wants to comment. Yes.
So a few things, something that wasn't addressed is, and I just want to be completely clear, before the tower, the launch tower. Well, they approached us, they told us that it had to be in a certain area, they didn't give us an option of that or any other place. I actually found the second option
Less than a year.
further up
He
that
he
would
landed there.
help Tom and help me.
And the elevation is about 150 feet higher.
So, and then also, in my business itself, the, one big market that's new to us is people work from home. You know what I mean? So I definitely would want the tower to be up The only thing again is the location. We've never had any issues with calling 911. We're a campground, there are always ambulances, police are constantly at our campground.
Well, I get called from my house, so I don't know that part.
Really?
I swear to God.
There's some areas.
So where we are, I mean, maybe, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I've never, you call 911.
Stand on the wall. No, I don't want to call that.
Anyway, it's not, but.
Just saying, I don't have time.
Certain areas with that.
So maybe where I am for them at my house, but either way, another thing that, so we're looking, we do have an open permit up there. We do want to expand at some point. You know, it's just when, you know what I mean? And, one thing I am concerned about is one, visible and also health. This is why these towers are not next to elementary schools, these towers, and I do have a print up here from the American Cancer Society that says there is nothing, there's no evidence of it having cancer or not. So, you know, in 5 years from now or 2 years from now, you know, I have 28 sites there now. I have my family there, Tom's family there, Steve's family nearby, you know,
We have 205 sites, just currently 28 right at the top, you know, up in the mountain. That's where the majority of our property for expansion is. And that's our concern. We actually want to put our own house there. And, more likely cabins, a lot of stuff.
the visibility too as well, which I didn't know that they were gonna cut down more trees, so you can see it now with the balloon. I was there, we were going back and forth up in the street saying, you know, he was telling me where it was actually. And so you definitely can see it. And Tom's house, you definitely can see it, for sure.
Yeah, Tom's
He's the one that has the worst. I have it, you know. We talked about maybe doing something along the line of, you know, making it pretty and stuff like that. Or, you know, making it more look like a tree or something, you know, and they said that doesn't really work. So, so those are just my concerns. We are looking to go year round as a business too, so that's the reason why we bought those camping cabins. You know, so this, you know.
Yeah, these are winter package glamping cabins. The goal is to be open for snowmobiling and ice castle and all that. It's just, we've had to literally put over 2 million into the infrastructure that's being run down. So we haven't been able to expand as quick as we'd like to, but we are expanding. It's just been taken care of current now, and now we're moving up on the other stuff. And again, we're never given a secondary option. Well, that's why I said, I'm not gonna have it there right in the middle of our property, you know? And what you don't see on the maps, like with this, when you see the towers, when you hit the road, we still have a lot of land on the other side of the road too, and that drops steep right there. So once that thing goes up, if you cut more trees around, I'm just concerned, again, if you want to put some up in this area, you know, we'd be happy to discuss it with them, but down there, I mean, we didn't take it because we just didn't want the ice one. People won't come here to look at towers.
What's the diameter of the amount of space that you cut down around where the tower goes? Because I mean, when you put the model up, it showed the tower in where the balloon currently is, but it didn't account for removal of trees where the tower is
The
gonna go.
compound itself is 60 by 60.
60 by
And
60.
then on the site plan,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
I would
what,
say
that's
it
where
would
the
like
fence is.
a little bit more because of some drainage elements to prevent stormwater runoff. So it's basically like 80 by 80, and that's a gross number, but it's very small. It's just a 60 by 60. But
Yeah,
a little
because
bit
it
so
looked
they
like
can-
the platform plus the fencing was where the 60 by 60 was and not a clearing around it.
Yeah,
So,
everything happens within the 60 by
Within the
60.
60 by
with a small-
60,
except
okay.
for something, a small utility cabinet, but
all right,
so everything's
thank you.
all fenced in. So the tower, the foundation, all the platforms where people put equipment, that's all within the 60 by 60.
And the fencing is within that 60 by
Yeah,
60.
the fence is 60 by 60.
And then there's, but don't you clear around the outside to get around the
Yeah,
fence?
but it's, you know, maybe 20 feet, you know, just to facilitate construction. It's not, we don't.
So 80 by 80,
Yeah.
so it's like 20 feet on all sides,
And I.
right? So that's 100 by 100.
You have to think about, you see that now.
No, not 60 plus 80.
But if you have 60 feet, right, and you have a 20-foot clearance all the way
Yeah.
around,
Yes.
20 plus 60 plus 20 is 100.
Exactly, yes.
So it's 100 by 100 clearing.
And it goes down like this, so once you remove
Correct.
those, it's gonna take on that top.
No, I'm gonna say 100 by 100, it's 80 by 80.
How do you, how's that math work?
60 plus 20.
But you said it's 20-foot clearing all the way around. So if you have it's
Now,
100 by 100.
Yes, you're right, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot bigger space, which the visual
Mhm.
that was presented didn't account for what that would look like with that amount of clearing. It was just,
So that's the base of what you're talking about, 100 by 100.
right,
You got 30, 40 foot trees, that's been a buffer zone, you're not seeing that 100
Yeah.
foot space. It's no different than him putting a house up there, 60 by 80.
well, it's going up. And as soon as you start
Exactly.
clearing away
Not
from
the,
something,
not the area on the ground is what you're explaining right now.
Well, it's gonna take the trees around the top that was hiding up some of it.
You're gonna see the tower up there.
Right.
Correct.
You're not gonna
Right.
see the 80 by 80 on the bottom.
Correct.
But it's just-
Correct.
All the way around.
Understood.
And then I think you're missing the issue here, is that these people missed the boat as far as cutting a deal with these people. I mean, if he doesn't wanna work with these people, there's no reason why holding him back and going with this people right here. So either way, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, 1,000 feet. You said you're 180 feet is what the tower is, that's 900 feet. So back off 100 feet all the way around that property for your tower. Before you just said if the tower falls, it's 1,000 feet, it's 900 feet.
I'm trying to understand the platform where it is and how it's getting placed on there, that's all.
I'm just saying, I mean,
If I could just,
you beat the dead horse once again, okay?
if I could just, we are here tonight seeking a special permit on a specific piece of property. We believe we provided all the data to show that not only meets your bylaw with the exception of waivers, that we meet the requirement for waivers, and it's the only viable alternative. We're not here to discuss other sites and other locations and other things like that. I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah, understood, thank you.
Yeah, we can get that. One of the things you do have to demonstrate is that you did, this isn't the only site you looked at. but you
And we
did
submitted an affidavit
Look at.
and a map with lots of other properties that we
other
looked at.
properties.
Yes.
We require rejection letters too on that as part of the ordinance. We're proposed to these other properties and
We call somebody and they don't respond, or we send them a letter and they don't reject.
National Forest would be the one that I'm interested in is a rejection letter from them.
We contacted them many times. They,
Just show me once, just bring me a piece of paper once as part of the package of questions that we have.
I cannot get a rejection letter because they don't take the time to write a letter that says we reject it.
It's part of our ordinance that, and again, I'm only about key stands or.
And I'll amend my application as per with.
Or, I mean, there's the people down in Campton, which is where the National Forest, that's you can walk right in there, they're very
The
nice.
National Forest was invited to this meeting tonight. They were invited to the meeting the last time we came to Woodstock. They were invited to the meeting when we went to Thornton, and we had to go to planning board and zoning board, and they're just not going to
You're
respond.
different, it's not, this isn't the same company that was in 2019, different company, so really, if you could maybe provide us something that you sent them a letter and they didn't respond. How's
The
that?
town sent them a letter.
No, I'm talking about the applicant, burden of proof is on you, not on us.
I provided you an affidavit that says that we cannot go on that land. If you don't accept that.
Because
you do
actually,
not-
the affidavit doesn't say that, what it says. Is that the one from Brendan Gill?
Yep.
Brendan Gill. Site acquisition specialist, is that him?
Yep,
All right, number nine.
Probably it's eight,
Number nine, here we go.
Yep.
Based on my personal knowledge of the proposed site and the surrounding area, there are no potential alternative candidates located within this geographically driven search ring that would be considered superior to the proposed sites. All possible locations on the 112 corridor fail to provide coverage needed due to lower elevation. My point is, go to higher elevation, which is National Forest, and if they won't give you a letter, they're the federal government who's using their hammer to say, we have to change our ordinance. Okay, they should be the ones who have to be talking because they're the federal government, and you're saying the federal government is saying we have to not be prohibitive, and I agree with that. We can't be prohibitive, but neither can they, so they have to respond to you. And that's what
I
we
don't think I
require.
have to respond. I can send them a letter. You sent them a letter, a certified letter to say, come to this meeting tonight, and they chose not to.
I'm just, again, it's part of the application, that's all.
I can certainly send a letter. I do not get a response. I will request a waiver.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, in the audience, is there anyone else?
Can I just one more little thing?
Sure.
Just today, we were just voted number 2 campground in New Hampshire.
Congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate that, for scenery. That was the one of the biggest things, scenery, family campground, so on and so forth, so for us to be, you know. I don't wanna lose that, you know what I mean?
Right,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. I think it's-
Here in Woodstock.
Yeah, right, exactly, it puts Woodstock on the map, you know what I mean, for other campgrounds and, you know, stuff like that, you know, so.
Any other comments from members of the audience? Any comments, from the folks on Zoom? Who's still on Zoom?
Well, good evening, everybody.
Hi there.
Hello, how are you all?
We can just barely hear you.
How are you all doing tonight? I recognize most of you.
Did you have any comments you want to make on this application? Or any questions?
Can you hear me, okay?
I can just barely hear you. I can pass along what I'm hearing. I'm sitting the closest.
Well, I mean, I could put him on speaker.
First of all, I want to thank everyone, for doing their due diligence.
Thank you.
You know, primarily the board. The board has asked some very, very good questions pertaining to this matter. I appreciate it. I wish I was there. I'm operating off of my cell phone for audio, and I'm able to see everybody in the room where I'm located in Massachusetts. I just have a couple of questions. If the board did grant permission to proceed with this tower, when would the construction be? When the campground would close in October? Would that be the case?
Did you hear that question?
Yes. Just so you know, we've spoken to the campground. They've expressed that concern, and we can certainly accommodate that. And our goal is to do the construction in October to early December, after the campground is closed, but before the snow comes.
Okay.
And if for some reason we couldn't get it done by December, we would agree to do it in the spring before the campground is closed, before the campground is open. So we can certainly work with them in that regard.
Yeah. So considering that, could we all agree that we have time on our side, kind of, in this matter, where that nothing can be, it can be no ground disturbed at all, or any construction to begin until October, and we're into what, the second week of May right now. So would it be safe to say that time is on our side to get questions answered and perhaps follow up with another meeting, hopefully in the middle of June, when my school year is over and I can attend in person?
Yes, I mean, that's one of our options, is to continue the hearing. We can announce tonight we're continuing the hearing without requiring all those notices going out to everybody all over again. We can make a decision because we have questions that need answers to. We can continue this hearing to another night. Sounds like there's quite a few questions and concerns, and that sounds like that might be wise. And I don't know whether we would want to continue it until next month, which would be the usual situation, or whether there is any time of the essence here and have another meeting before.
I think if we get the information and the questions that we've asked from Mr. Parisi, and with a plan of it being at the next month's meeting, that would be great, as long as we have our questions answered prior to that.
And we can make sure he gets all the questions asked. Well, first of all, the recording will indicate the questions we asked, never mind the minutes. But, yeah, I think that would be wise and the thing to do. A lot of questions were raised. And it sounds like construction isn't going to begin next month.
There is a material logistics associated with it. I'm sure on your, from your perspective, you have materials, et cetera, that need to be. place.
The biggest stress we have is winter.
Mhm.
And because it's like a 5 to 6 month difference between
Correct.
November and May.
Mhm.
The issue with postponing it is, like I said, we have a very extensive federal due diligence that we have to do.
Yep.
And I can't even start, but I have to notify probably 10 different state and federal agencies. We're building a tower here. And they don't like it if, for example, the town denied it. They don't like to get the notice in advance. We don't start that process until this process is done.
Right.
So if we would come here in June, then I'd start that process in June, July, August, September, October. That challenges me to get it done before the winter.
Correct.
So if we were gonna continue it, I'm sorry, I don't know your
Lee.
answer. You've asked several questions. I've taken some notes.
Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure that I have a list of what you're looking for.
Right.
Correct.
And you asked about the access easement, and I can certainly provide you with that. You wanted some more maps showing the alternatives and the lack of alternatives. You wanted us to contact the FAA, to contact the National Park Service, or the National Forest, excuse me.
Yes.
That's really all I have on my list.
Yeah, the other biggie was, and it's probably on us more than anything else, is to ask about the prohibition and the liability related to us granting the waiver. Should there be something else, and that's probably, I would say, that's on us,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
so.
that would be our
But yeah, that's,
job.
right, the rejection letter from the Forest Service, the FAA letter, the right-of-way deed. You said this utility easement.
Yeah, and
That'll
then
be,
some more maps.
yeah, the map for
Yeah,
the showing tower.
You did the math. 5 times tower setback. If we have to do 175 foot tower, 350, 135 times 5 is, how about feet?
It's, you have it on one of yours. You have it on one.
750 feet times 2, which is 1,500 feet. I don't know that there's that many lots in Woodstock. I think that's a pretty big lots here. That. It's pretty easy to show, and then we can also show from topography purposes, just because I can go to the National Park Service is certainly more than 1,500 feet in diameter, whatever. But it's really easy to rule that out just based on topography. But I gotta be, and so we can certainly provide some of that.
Sure. Perfect. That'd be excellent.
Can you look at the campgrounds request of moving higher up? Remember they
No.
said
No, I cannot.
that isn't an option.
no,
so
no,
can you look at it?
We are here tonight seeking a special permit on a very specific lot.
So this
I don't have a business deal with the campground. I don't have the right, I have the right to cross over their property via deeded access.
Right.
We have the right to go on map 7 lot 2, and so that's all we're here tonight to talk about.
Yeah, no, I agree. We have an application before us.
And
Period.
your
For that
authority-
location, yes, no.
It-
I just heard though that
then.
that an objection might go away.
Is to approve or deny. You
Approve or
cannot
not.
say go
Yes,
somewhere else,
right.
because we don't, I
Well-
can't go there.
We can
Actually, it's a-
say, an alternative came up and we have a right to ask some questions, whether that alternative somebody suggested is feasible or not. Might not be financially, might not be geographically, logistically, or any other reason, but I think it's within our purview to ask you to demonstrate that the location you're proposing is the most appropriate one.
I agree with that statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chairman of the board, I have one other question, if that's possible.
Tom,
Yeah,
you have another
I have-
question?
Yes, I do. Briefly, it was discussed about power to the tower. Can he explain one more time where he would be accessing the power that would go up the right of way to the Ingles property?
Exactly.
We bring power from the nearest. I don't know what's called, power source. Where the utility company has power. Usually power is either public or private, meaning owned by the utility company or owned by a private individual. So we contract with the power company to bring it up along the right of way. From where the power company owns the power pole.
Brennan, you're saying that's on your land, this power here?
Finished, I guess.
Okay.
So my question is, at the bottom of my driveway, there is a telephone pole, and myself and Mr. Ingles went and paid for 635 feet of underground power to go to the box, including 2 other boxes, to the end of my driveway. Is that the power source you plan on tapping into?
I'll be honest, I don't know specifically, but I understand the question and I can answer that for you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna take this one step further. I do remember 7 or 8 years ago when I built my home, that the cable that went underground was $21.35 a foot to go 635 feet. And that doesn't include the installation and the ductwork and the construction to put that underground. If you're choosing to tap into that power source that Mr. Ingles and I paid for, do you feel that your company is responsible for 1/3 of that cost?
Like I said, we deal with the power company and, either we would bring it from where the power company has the right or negotiate with you and Mr. Ingles if we were to tap on the stuff that you own. We don't plan to use things that either we or the power company doesn't have the right to give us. So I understand the question. I don't know where we're planning. I can't see hands. Usually what happens is after we get approved, we then walk the site with the power company and come up with a power plan. And, but it's on their, at some point, the power company owns the poles and the service. I don't know whether it starts on Lost River Road or goes all the way up past your property. But we will walk with them and come up with a plan. And it doesn't really matter to us. We're not trying to steal or utilize your service, but if we have to bring in our own separate, we'll do that.
Yes?
What kind of impact is this gonna have to all of my property going up there as far as installing all this? Is this going onto the access road or is this gonna be up to the sides? I mean, we're gonna be looking at telephone poles or are you tearing it all up? Cause I mean. It's a lot of land going up there. I want to know what kind of impact we're gonna have to that as well.
Can you answer?
And it would be certainly within, it would certainly be within the easement that is already, that Mr. Ingles already has. Mr. Ingles already has a utility and access easement to his property. It would be squarely within that.
Rex, you had a
Yeah, I
comment?
put that in for Jeff and Tom, and the power company had to get an easement from all of them to put that in there. So the vault that is on Brendan and Nancy's land and Tom's land, the power company has an easement right there by that vault. So it was stubbed out for future use, and that's probably right where they take it off from.
Okay,
What is it like? Do they go up the sides or go under the road? I mean, what?
They're right up the side of his driveway, I would think.
They have to stay within the legally deeded right away.
Okay, correct. I don't know.
So they would stay within the utility easement that,
So if they want to.
okay? Any other questions or comments? Tom or anybody in the room?
I'm good for now. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, there'll be another chance. We're gonna continue this until June. Our next meeting, which is June, the second Monday. Whatever the date of that is. Let's look it up and make sure so it gets in the minutes. The exact date and time, because that becomes a public notice.
June 12th.
June 12th at 6 o'clock. We are continuing this hearing. And it'll be noticed on the website, noticed in the paper. Not necessarily, noticed on the website, noticed on the door. On the Facebook, we'll try to get notice out. But it's not a notice to all the above, you know, in the mail. All right, thank you all. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Continue, not close, continue this hearing until June 12th.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Mom says thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, soon, Nancy. Okay, bye, Jerry.
All right, next on the agenda is election of officers and appointment of alternates. Carried that forward from the April meeting. We did post a request, a notice that we were seeking alternates on the website, and we got no responses. We didn't get any.
Wonderful.
We have interested Jerry who ran, and he's interested in becoming an alternate.
I'd make the motion that we approve Terry as an alternate.
I second that.
Okay. Any other nominations for alternates at this moment?
Sure.
I would want to call the vote.
That's what my wife says.
All right, want to call the roll?
Margaret,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Igor,
Lee.
Yes.
Yes. Congratulations, Jerry. And we have to fill out this form and give it to Judy at the town office. And then you go in there and you get sworn in. So we'll all put our names on this. So we can give it to
Sworn in or sworn in?
both. And we also need to elect our officers for the ensuing year. Basically, our officers are our chair and vice chair. Currently, it's myself as chair and Margaret is vice chair. So I'm opening up the floor to nominations for, we can do them separately, or so I will entertain any nominations.
I'm still learning, so I have to abstain. One more meeting and I can do it, but I can't do it yet.
Okay. Does anybody want to make any motions at this time?
How about if we defer for one more meeting
Okay,
and then we can go, keeping the same leadership that we have.
all right. All right,
I make that motion anyway.
okay. Lee makes the motion that we defer it until the June meeting. And continue with the present slate of offices. All right, let's see. Let's call it on that.
Margaret,
Sure.
Lee,
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Igor,
Yes.
and Jerry.
Yes.
Yes. And Jerry, we can make a motion to, no, we can't.
No, not really sworn in.
We're not sworn in yet. No, we gotta wait for that. Okay, approval of the March 13th meetings and April 10th.
So because I wasn't here for the March 13th meeting, I can't vote on it. I don't know.
Here.
And I don't know what you need. On the April 10th one, I certainly can vote.
Right.
And say, yay on that.
Usually, if you were not in attendance at the meeting,
Yeah, I-
abstain from voting on them
Right.
is the custom. That's what we customarily do.
Right.
So do we have enough people here
That's
that
my
will
question.
add
right?
the March?
Just give you and me.
Just you and I? Okay, we'll defer that then.
We'll have to wait until Scott gets back.
Yes.
Right.
We'll have to wait for him. Okay, the April 10th, are we ready for that one? All right,
Yes.
Yes,
does somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any corrections, errors, omissions, anything else? Okay. Want to call the roll?
Margaret,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Igor.
Yes. Jerry's vote probably shouldn't be counted yet until he gets sworn in.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I mean,
Well, it's just practice.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I've had plenty of practice.
You're not just tying up anything, so it's not causing any harm here. Scott is not here, so there's no selectmen's report. Correspondence received, we've got a letter from the DOT for the bridge, 995-93, scour, countermeasures and traffic control. And that's just notification. I don't think there's any action we have to take. It's just notification, just letting us know. We received an updated bond for the culvert construction on two properties. We've got to probably do a little research on this because a year ago, we voted to call a continuation certificate, to accept the continuation certificate under the old rates and to enable the two properties to be covered under one bond. So I think I've got to check what we voted last time, but I assume this is the appropriate bond. So at this point, we'll just say we've received a continuation certificate in the amount of $10,000 for surface or strip mining, sand and gravel for, it looks like the two properties, but we've just received it, so we'll research to make sure it's the correct amount and which properties. But we did receive it. And we received a divine property alteration of terrain permit. We have no application before us at this time, so that's just notification at this point in time. Master Plan Subcommittee met last week. And one of the key things that came out of that was Scott is interested in hosting a meeting with the downtown business owners and the Chamber of Commerce. He's willing to host it, just to have a downtown meeting and see what's on the minds of the folks downtown. And that's really the next step to be taken. Other than we wondered about and heard about a grant that we can apply for, and I think everybody got a copy of it, where we can apply for $50,000 to hire a consultant to look over our ordinances and to suggest any changes in ordinances and so forth and so on. The group gathered for the, subcommittee meeting, which, they're all here. Brian, Jerry, Igor and I met, that was at the last meeting. We really weren't too keen on it. We
I'm
weren't
opposed
too
to it.
no.
I'm a no vote.
We were a no also because we think we're further along than that. And our goal is not just to look at the ordinances we have and see, we don't have zoning. What other ordinances would we come up with? And never mind, we can do that all on our own without us hiring a $50,000 consultant.
Right.
And it's a year process, and it's gonna set us back. And it's not gonna
Agreed.
accomplish what I thought. So,
Agreed.
but it would be, of course, this board, that would vote to submit the application and go to the selectmen. So the subcommittee recommending to this board that, let's not apply for that.
I would make the motion that we not apply for the investment manager grant.
I second that.
Okay. Any other comment on it? All right, wanna go through the rule? Margaret?
Voting yes means not applying, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I'm voting yes, it's not. Good question.
Yeah, so yes, not apply. Lee,
Yes, not apply.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes,
and Igor.
yes. Well, thank you. That was just our opinion. It was an opinion that we brought forward and I think we're making the appropriate one. It's just gonna set us back and bog us down. All right, next we have, let's see. The DOT Green Bridge, April 12th meeting, some of us went, was well attended. The whole Route 175 group certainly showed up. And heard that it's gonna be about a year, they're gonna have to go all the way around. And I'm thinking of a couple of people that walk that road all the time. It's gonna be totally into pedestrian traffic, and I can think of poor Michelle who walks up street every day. But at any rate, we learned a lot about the project and how it's going to proceed and what's going to be accomplished. And it will look the same, and yes, it'll be painted green. It'll be the deck of it. It will be a solid deck, not a grate. And it will go forward. So, and I don't know, other people attended the hearing, but that's basically the key stuff that we heard. And then there was Horizon did a water and sewer public hearing along with other things. And we did hear encouraging news that they are looking at the sewer and water infrastructure, studying what we have. We did suggest, well, while you're at it, maybe you should look at future growth. I mean, what should be our master plan or a capital improvement program? Look, 5 or 10 years, not just replace exactly what we got, but fix exactly what we got, but what is our growth predictions? And does it make more sense to expand the services to other areas of town, down Route 3 or whatever? Does it make sense to expand and thereby get more customers, and thereby it's more cost effective? Never mind, open up parts of town that do not have service right now. So they assured us they were going to look at all of that. And we also suggested, well, it'd be nice if this study didn't take forever, and that we had some sort of a word before a town meeting, so that the taxpayers had an opportunity to bring something forward, vote on something towards a master plan for sewer and water into the future. So they were given the Horizon, the engineers, we're kind of given the task of looking at the current system. We did here that our systems are pretty old and pretty much outdated. Almost near the end of their life, we heard that.
I think the word was that we already used all the.
We've used it, we've used up the
It's
system.
beyond the
It's beyond us thinking that,
life
System we-
expectancy.
yes, the current systems we have are beyond their life expectancy. And yes, we will be needing some improvements in sewer and water. But that all goes along with our 5-year and 10-year growth and predictions into the future and so forth. But they are looking at it. That's the encouraging news. And maybe bring forward a something for consideration at town meeting or not. At least it's being looked at. Anybody else at that meeting think of anything else to add? What we heard?
That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That's it in a nutshell. Yeah, and it's on the selectmen's agenda.
Yeah.
To look at it. They're all for it. It's not like, you know, they're hiding their head in the sand and not recognizing that those are topics that need to be looked at. So I have 2 other things on here. Any other business? We didn't want other board members or people in the audience to think that there wasn't other business or other priorities that everybody has on their mind. It's not just our list. Does anybody in the room have any other business they want to bring up before the board? It's fine. Okay. And a reminder to board members to check the website for meetings of interest. I happened to miss one. Was it last week? There was another public hearing that Kathy told us about, and about the scouring of the bridge, that project. I might have gone if I had focused on it being held that night, but they're not our meetings. It's not mandatory to go. Those are selectmen's meetings, but as time goes on, it's good to know what the other groups are doing. So look at the website now and then, and we have nothing else other than public participation. Do you have Rex or Sherry? Anything to add? Brian? All right,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. This is about one of our longest meetings.
Sorry.
Not
And
quite.
I never, no, don't be sorry. It was an awesome meeting. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. I've never heard anybody oppose adjourning, so we're adjourned.
As long as they-
Okay. All right, well, keep this. Give this to Kathy. Give this to Kathy.
Get that form to Judy and I'll be there tomorrow or the next day.
Everybody sign that wonderful form.
Yes.
And you've got it, right?
I'll get it to you.
And you'll be there tomorrow,
Yep.
okay?
And not like the last time where it was weeks.
She needs the minutes from me first,
Okay.
so I come in tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm trying to do me. How could I skip over the first part of the meeting and do a second part of minutes for Judy to? We have to have that first before.
This
Yeah,
one,
okay.
the excerpt.
Sorry, part where we moved early, give her that. Okay. So
Just-
I'll
just
just do the first thing.
After meeting held, blah, blah, blah.
Figured
You
just before lunch. Wait, no, wait, I got appointments tomorrow. It'll be after lunch. I'll be in the afternoon. I'll be here tomorrow, but in the afternoon.
All right, this needs to.